Hi, my name is Ben Lieberman, and our organization, Dorks, is one of the hosts of today's activities. I wanted to give you a little insight into our mission, and I'm going to approach this a little differently. I believe in this case, how to make the future better is to take some lessons from our past. So let me start with this 10-second flashback from back in the day.
Make it one for my baby, and one more for the road.
So the point I'm trying to make here is to take a look at Frank Sinatra, who back in the day was the coolest cat around. And there are two things going on here. One, you'll never hear a bartender say, have one more for the road. Think about the legal liability and just the social stigma about drunk driving that's developed now. Also, take a look at the cigarette. You know, back then, chain smoking and smoking 2 or 3 packs of cigarettes a day was as common as anything. And like I said, that was back in the day. And let's take a look at this next slide. So you see on the left, it's kind of an interesting slide here. You got actually a doctor saying more doctors smoke Camel than any other cigarette. And as surprising as that is, that was kind of a common type of advertisement. And while everybody was smoking 2 or 3 packs of cigarettes a day, and guys like Joe DiMaggio or Heroes of the Day were doing cigarette commercials, it was very common. And where I'm going with this is just because things are common doesn't mean it's not moronic. Just because everybody is doing it doesn't make it right. And we had to go through a transformation with that. And if you take a look at this, the middle slide here with the Newport Pleasure and how fun and exciting cigarette smoking was, it took a while before we went from the slide on the left where the doctor is recommending Camels to how much fun it is, to that slide on the right where smoking is very glamorous. And once we started seeing the negative effects of cigarette smoking, and once enough people were damaged by it, we started taking it seriously, and we started a new type of education about that. And I think it's somewhat effective that you can look back now and say that there's a lot less smoking now than there was. Social behavior can change, and just like with drunk driving, and just like with cigarettes, and just like with seatbelts, behavior can change, and that's where we're heading towards with this, with our idea for Dorks, with distracted operators, risk casualties. So now, knowing that if we feel like we've identified some dangerous behavior, let's see if we really are identifying dangerous behavior, because a lot of people think that like cigarettes, like seatbelts, and like drinking and driving with your cell phone is not that dangerous. So what I'm going to talk about a little bit now is the education part of what we're trying to convey here. With this next slide, I have a brief video, and this was a whole half-hour TV show that we've consolidated into less than a minute. And what you're going to see here is also, like University of Utah, that did a very comprehensive study on the effects of driving with a cell phone. They did this academic study, and they basically accurately determined that driving with your cell phone is equivalent to driving while intoxicated, to a 0.8 level of alcohol. That's what that academic study did. But here on this TV show, we got a field study, and I'm going to show you what they did and how they went about it. So you can see on the top there, basically have somebody driving, operating a cell phone, and they're giving instructions on where to turn, how to turn, back up, different type of things. And on the bottom, it's basically the same test, except they got somebody liquored up first, and they put them through the same motion. And the idea is to see how well they tested versus each other, how well the cell phone driver did versus the drunk driver. And in a second or two, you'll hear the results of what they came up with.
So, what's the final word?
Clearly the results show that talking on the cell phone or driving is potentially as dangerous as driving drunk.
But we failed the cell phone test by a much bigger margin. It's absolutely confirmed.
Here's another one that I want to show you that's real brief, that if you're having trouble getting your hands around using your cell phone is the same thing as driving drunk. Here's a short clip of a police officer that's about to pull somebody over who actually he suspected was a drunk driver. And why wouldn't he suspect it? Look at how erratically he's driving. And as you see, the results are pretty damaging. This guy got out of the car, and they determined right away he was texting, which is a challenge to begin with also. But notice that it wasn't a high speed, and notice how similar it did look to drunk driving. So it's an interesting part of our education is to get people to understand just because everybody's doing it and just because it's common doesn't mean it's equally as dangerous as some of the other bad habits that we've had in the past that we were able to educate and overcome. So the reason I'm so passionate is we learned firsthand of the dangers, and I'd like to tell you a little bit about our story and the motivation for creating Dorks and the principles of our organization, because ultimately this is how this conference came about. My son was the backseat passenger in a car collision in June 2011. He just finished his freshman year at UConn and was working construction job at Woodbury Commons, which is somewhat close to West Point Military Academy and a little bit north of here. He was carpooling with the driver and two other boys and sleeping in the back seat with a seatbelt on during the morning rush hour when the collision happened. The driver of the car crossed over the WL line and went head-on into a Jeep Liberty. He told the police officer he fell asleep on a windy, thin, mountainous road during rush hour. Evan was medevaced here to Westchester Medical Center. My son died 3 times during his 1-month stay here. The first night he was in cardiac arrest and the doctors brought him back to us. We were here for our wedding anniversary. We left the hospital to attend my daughter's high school graduation. So you see this picture here is from her prom before graduation. And then we came back right here to the hospital. The second time we lost him was during the July 4th weekend. They taped up the glass window to intensive care entrance with cardboard so no one can view, including myself. And I had my heart in my throat until the doctor said they got him back. On July 18th, in front of our eyes, with doctors frantically working on him in a way that no TV show or movie could do justice portraying, we lost him. This Saturday would have been his college graduation. The drivers told authorities he fell asleep at the wheel. The day after the crash, he apologized to the boys through Facebook and said he was exhausted and taking those 1-second naps at the wheel. But, he also testified that he slept at 11 p.m. and he had plenty of sleep the night before. That all didn't make sense to me, so I needed to learn more. Through much of our own efforts, which consisted of a civil suit in which we were able to force depositions and obtain phone records, we brought our case before an administrative judge. We submitted the phone records that showed texting throughout the drive and close to the collision. That judge ruled that the driver who crashed the car violated several traffic laws, including using his cell phone while driving. His license was suspended for a year. Before any of this was brought to light, to literally add insult to injury in every way that phrase was created, the driver was mugging for many pictures on Facebook, partying hard. My daughters are around the same age and the same group of friends and viewed all these pictures. It was very difficult explaining the fairness in the world, seeing this guy pulling his pants down, posing like a gangster, or dancing on a table, or playing beer pong. I can't imagine anyone in this audience viewing those pictures under the circumstances and not being crushed. The need to get this message out is more than just about punishment. It actually stops further destructive behavior, and in our case could have prevented hurt or damage with those callous pictures. I'll explain what I mean because the concept became the essence of our desire to create Dorks. We wanted to approach the problem in a similar way that Mothers Against Drunk Driving tackled DWI. As we were discussing before, make this behavior socially unacceptable. We believe those hurtful pictures never would have seen the light of day had this driver been an intoxicated driver that caused damage. And that's because of the social stigma that's now associated through much of the efforts of groups like MAD. More importantly, the social unacceptance of this behavior can save other lives. Understanding the problem is a big part of that, and that's why we think it's important to share our story. It's difficult to air it in public, but ultimately we believe it saves lives, and that's becoming the priority. We view this fight much like a 3-legged stool, and it needs all legs to stand on or else it's going to be ineffective. The other founding principles of our group beyond education, as we just spoke about, is legislation and enforcement. So talking about legislation, first I'm going to show you our Facebook page. And this is the Dorks Facebook page, and I'm not showing you this necessarily to get you to like the page, although I'd be more than honored if anybody wanted to like the page and get involved with the organization. But more important than the Facebook page is I want to show you where this Facebook page is being taken from, because this picture is being taken in a car, a Tesla to be specific, that's driving, I don't remember, it's 30, 40, or 50 miles an hour. But the one thing that I could say is that you can access full internet, Facebook, or other type of pages while you're driving at full force, and the driver has full access to this thing. So I have a friend that actually bought a Tesla, and he was disappointed by this and wrote a letter to them. And rather than me lecturing you about this, I think that his letter is very poignant and can actually explain a lot of what we're really trying to sum up with the legislation point of our organization, Dorks. The letter that he wrote starts out with, "I've purchased a Model S and expect delivery in mid-December. The features are amazing, but I question the wisdom of allowing the internet to be in the center console when the car is driving. Distracted driving is a huge problem, and it seems as if this can bring distraction to a new level. One of my close friend's son died in a car accident in the back seat wearing a seatbelt when the driver was texting. I really think you guys need to think about how to decrease rather than increase distractions while driving a car." The executive at Tesla actually answered the letter, and this is what he said. "Thank you for your message and your purchase of the Model S. We appreciate your support. For internet access, we trust our customers to do the right thing and minimize the amount of distraction from any source. Please note that we try to develop the best possible voice recognition system, which can let drivers keep both hands on the steering wheel. Many thanks again for your support. Best regards." So now there's one more quick email that I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you his answer because I think his answer really is the best way to sum everything up in this form of legislation. He said, "I'm extremely disappointed by your answer. We trust our kids and other adults not to drive and text, email, or use their smartphones, but the statistics say that too many of them are engaging in actions that distract from giving 100% of their attention to the road. You are becoming an enabler of a very dangerous behavior." So, and this is where I think my friend makes a really good point. He says, "I hope you guys realize that what you are doing and figure out a way that no one has the option of using the internet while driving. If not, don't be surprised when the government realizes what is going on and regulates you in a way that Tesla may not enjoy." And I think that's really a key point here is that nobody wants to be told what to do. Nobody wants unwanted regulation. But in a civilized society, we develop laws to protect our citizens, innocent people. And I think that many people here are very, very grateful of the laws that have been enacted for DWI. And right now, there are definitely companies like this that are acting in an irresponsible fashion, and it's basically there's a call for regulation then. So I'm going back to the Facebook page because in case you think I might be exaggerating with this in some way, or you think I'm because nobody would be that silly or that dumb to be operating Facebook while they're driving. It's, you know, in this day and age where we hear so much about distracted driving, you couldn't imagine anybody operating Facebook while they're driving. So the next slide here is basically, this happened a few weeks ago. The woman posts about Happy Song on Facebook, you know, the Pharrell song Happy. Woman posts about Happy Song on Facebook seconds before fatal crash. So she said she posts on Facebook at 8:33, the Happy Song makes me happy. At 8:34, she was dead. And we're not talking about a teenager here. This is a 32-year-old woman. So I think there's a lot of statements that can be made by this. But going back to that previous slide about accessing the internet while you're driving is absolutely intolerable, and we need regulation to go about this, because it's one thing if you're going to ruin your own life, but people that are doing this actually can affect other people's lives. And that's what's like DWI. That's why there's such a need for this type of restriction.
MTA bus drivers in some hot water after being caught texting while driving. Now, according to the Staten Island Advance, a reader sent this video she shot on the X22A express bus from Manhattan to Staten Island this week. The woman said the texting began around the Lincoln Tunnel and continued for most of the trip. Now, the MTA say they have a zero-tolerance policy when it comes to texting while driving.
So you see that bus driver was suspended for 20 days. That's what they're determining as zero tolerance. So again, legislation and education are key, that people can understand this and associate the right risk with this, because our belief is that right now we're not currently associating the right risk with this. So that's the education and that's the legislation portion of what we're trying to do. And later on, I'll be moderating a panel that's going to be talking about enforcement. So I'll save that part of our presentation for then. But thank you very much for your time here, and I look forward to spending the day with you at this conference. And thanks again for everything. Thanks for being here, and thanks for being part of the people that care about what we're trying to do.